personal or private, I'm sure everyone will stay for a little bit so you can talk one-on-one or at least exchange information so that you can have a follow-up. So let me just quickly introduce our speakers here. Rocky is our first one.
Sorry, guys.
Rocky Rodriguez, and he's with Gays Against Groomers, and he's the co-chapter leader for the state of Wisconsin. He is an ex-liberal turned conservative. He's a pro-First and Second Amendment individual. He's been fighting for parental rights against the erasure of the gay and lesbian community at the hands of a fringe radical minority for the last eight years. The last 2 of those 8 have been with Gays for Groomers. Against groomers. Sorry. Gays Against Groomers. Sitting next to him is Tammy. In 2021, Tammy sued the Kettle Moraine School District for allowing her daughter to socially transition at school, against her and her husband's wishes. In October of 23, a judge ruled in Tammy's favor, stating the school violated her parental rights by allowing her daughter to socially transition at school. She's here to share her experiences and things she's learned while helping her daughter through the mental health struggle. Unfortunately, our third panelist, Chance, who is a detransitioner, tested positive last night for COVID, and she lives about 3 hours away, so she has chosen not to come, but I will provide you with some information if you want to look her up on social media. And then on the end is Dr. Lucas Grindle. Dr. Lucas has been surrounded by the principles of chiropractic all his life and a part of the Wellness Way out of Green Bay since 2018. His mother is not only an esteemed chiropractor, but a respected professor of chiropractic as well. While Dr. Lucas first sought clinical psychology in business and higher education, he quickly realized that as a doctor of chiropractic, he would be able to help more people than in any other field. After going back to school, he found the Wellness Way Student Club, a club available to students at a number of chiropractic universities across the country. The Wellness Ways method are founded in the chiropractic philosophies that Dr. Lucas desired to see practiced. Just as the founders intended, he found the additional education he needed to become a well-rounded, comprehensive chiropractor he knew he wanted to be. Great, so thank you very much. What I would like to do is I would like to kick it off with saying the pledge and to honor all the veterans that we might have in the audience since it is Veterans Day. We want to thank you for your service and realize that this country would not be where it is today without all the people that came before us fighting for the freedoms that we currently have. And I'm going to ask my husband, Dean Ackman, who is a retired Air Force person, to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing, I'd like you to say a prayer over our group today. Father, we praise you for this event and your purpose for it. We know that when we gather together, you always have a divine agenda. We love you for that, Father, that even when we have done what you have asked, the results are so much greater than we could ever have imagined. Even in failed attempts, you blow us away with your faithfulness to provide what we need. Our prayer today is that you will be done through this event. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Steer our intentions to align your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail us or fall short. May all glory go up to you when we reach the finish line and climb over benchmarks. Blanket us with your peace today, Father. Keep us physically safe and guard our hearts and minds from pride and selfishness. Keep love at the forefront of our minds today and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. For those of you that don't know me, and I probably should have introduced myself, I am Laura Ackman. I am the Moms for Liberty chapter chair in Winnebago County. I also am an ambassador for Wisconsin with the Moms for Liberty, and I'm covering from Winnebago County up north and to the east and west of us. I also sit on the legislative team within Wisconsin for Moms for Liberty. Last year, I had the opportunity to testify up in Madison several times, and that's where I met Jesse. We had some very interesting sessions up there.
Just at the very least.
Yeah, something to talk about. Just to talk a little bit about Moms for Liberty, we were founded in 2021 by Tiffany Justice and Tina Diskovich. They were two moms who sat on the school board during the COVID period and saw a lot of what was going on. And once their terms on the school board ended, they decided to take action and form Moms for Liberty. Our mission is dedicated to educating and empowering students and parents about their rights at all levels of government. We consider ourselves joyful warriors, even though lots of people call us a hate organization, which you will hear or read in the papers. We are joyful warriors. We're moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, friends, neighbors, all who care about our children today. And, you know, it pains us to hear the rhetoric that's out there, but we know in our hearts what we're all about. And I always like to say, I have never prayed so much as I have going to all the meetings, because we're primarily Christian-based. It isn't part of the prerequisite to join Moms for Liberty. It's just who really makes up the group. I wanted to share a little bit today about what the Winnebago chapter's been doing and what we're trying to replicate. We now have over 20 chapters in Wisconsin. We've grown that from 11, I think, a year and a half ago. And we have a lot more that are interested. And so we're working on that because we believe, as most of the people that are here or that I talk to, that our children are at risk, our schools are failing us terribly. And the more that we can wake up parents and the people, the local people that can help us, and the school boards, wake up the school boards, the more momentum we're going to get to really change what's going on. And I think with the changes we're going to have in government, it's going to help facilitate some of that, but it's still not going to be easy. In the Winnebago chapter, when we kicked it off, we really started on the books, because that's what a couple of dads who talked to us were really interested in. They had been going to school board meetings and they were really frustrated with the pornography that was in our schools, and they wanted to do something about it. So we brought a bunch of people together and decided we're all in, and we started a chapter, and that's what we started focusing on. We looked at, we had a list of over 600 books, and we said, let's, try to chunk this out so it's something that we actually can do. And we said, let's go after the high school. And so we tried to pick the top 30 books that we thought were the worst. And I will tell you, parents and school boards really didn't care about it. And there's a few people in this room who were with me when we went and talked to principals, and we talked at the school boards, and they just called us book banners, and parents really just didn't want to wake up on that, which is shocking when you look at what is in these books. We're not going to give up. We're going to continue to go after it, but timing is everything. And we did wake a few parents up, and you start to build momentum when you have an organization like this. And the more that we can wake people up, and the more that people that can see it, I think we will definitely win in the long run. De Pere is having a very difficult time right now. One of the school board members brought some issues up, and the one conservative on the board, and they're going after her and trying to recall her or attempt to recall her. And the people that brought up some books, the other people are being very hateful. So it isn't for the faint of heart. But we stand strong with that, and we won't give up, because it isn't normal that you can allow the kind of books that are truly our pornography in our books. And that is one thing Gays Against Groomers have also thought about and continue to push, that we need to get rid of it. We also are all about the school boards, the memberships there and their effectiveness, and we're trying to get more people to run and get on these school boards. And Dean, we got him elected last year, so we're learning even more. Because now we have someone on the inside who can, we're really seeing how things work. And I don't think school board people are bad people, I just think they've been in the system way too long, and they learn to get along and go along, right? I think the Department of Education threatens, if you don't do this, we're gonna withhold funding. Wisconsin Department of Instruction does the exact same thing. We're gonna make these changes, if you don't do it, we're gonna cut your funding, and I think it just wears down our administrators. I'm sure there are some bad people out there that have ill intentions, but I just really think that there's many school boards that don't want the conflict. They don't want to have that fight. You can tell when we bring things up, they just want it to go away, but we're not gonna go away. The other thing is ideologies that are being pushed in our school, and I'm gonna talk about that. I wanna talk about school scorecards, the math and reading proficiencies that are just absolutely horrible, and then the title impact, the Title IX impact that we've been talking about since about August 1st. Most parents, most citizens don't even know that it was going on. Thank goodness Moms for Liberty actually was on the mark, and because they're tied into the legislator, they knew what was going on and filed a lawsuit, but until we were told about the lawsuit, I had no idea that it was going on and what it meant. But boy, we read a lot and got up to speed really quickly. The first thing I want to talk about in detail is about DPI, the Department of Instruction here in Wisconsin. It is crazy what they're doing. And when you look in 2023, our proficiencies in Wisconsin, 61% were below grade level in English literature, in ELA. 62.6% of our kids are below grade in math. How can that be? And it's been like, when I went back to look at this, it's been like that a very long time. In our school districts, we had children who just graduated high school. 50% of our high schoolers cannot read or do math at grade level. How can we perform on the global stages if our kids can't read and do basic math? And no one seems to be upset about it. But we are starting, this is one of those, the books didn't necessarily wake everybody up, it woke up a few people. The lack of proficiency in math and reading is starting to wake up parents. And it's difficult to get the messages out, and that's what we're trying to do, but I think people are starting to hear about that. So I have spent the last 6 months pulling data, going out and talking to organizations, to school districts and about these proficiency ratings, and they're a little bit in denial. It's interesting. I believe they've learned to have their responses ready, and they just kind of try to talk over you when you bring up, like, how can you stand there and explain to me why 50% of the kids cannot read or do math? And then they go off on some tangent and try to get you to, like, lose your train of thought. And I just kept standing there going, I don't understand it, explain to me. And at one point, they looked me in the eye and I said, well, who's gonna be the future doctors and accountants and lawyers if they can't read or do math? And they said, oh, Laura, everyone doesn't need to be a doctor. I was so flabbergasted, I didn't have a comeback for that. Imagine that. And that's crazy. And many of you probably know Dr. Duke Pesta. I mean, we're in his building right now. He spoke to us a year ago and shared with us that the teachers that go for their certification in Oshkosh read at the 10th grade level. So think about that. So that tells you that this lack of proficiency has been going on for a really long time. Back at my table, I do have some of these lists of all the school districts that I've gone to. So if you want information, I might actually have yours, but it's terrible. In Brown County, I pulled all of Green Bay, and there were some schools that had no kids above the 50th percentile. And in Fond du Lac, when I pulled theirs, it was, mostly what I see is somewhere between 50 and like 78 that can't read. They actually had one school in Fond du Lac where 82% were above. Oh. That's a month. So then you say, okay, why can that school perform so well? There are schools out there in Wisconsin that are doing very well, but that isn't the majority. And it's really hard to find out the information on that. One thing I want to share with you is last year when we were talking at one of our meetings, they let it slip that the providers that do these testing were going to recalibrate the testing. And, you know, they even admitted, they're like, yeah, so like if you're only at 25% this year, you might test out at 50% next year, and the parents really won't realize that it's just the testing. I mean, when you get them talking, sometimes they share information and you're just like, oh my gosh, right? Like, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. Sure enough. And again, no parents have known anything about this. DPI put out a press release and then an email to all the superintendents in Wisconsin. And I just have one paragraph I want to read to you. One important result of these improvements in the current forward assessment results in ELA and mathematics are not comparable to previous year's results. So there was no way for, and they did this 5 years ago as well, because I tried to pull 10 years worth of data and I couldn't, because it's apples and oranges so much so that you can. This is similar, they even admit it, this is similar to what happened when assessments or standards change were made in 2012 to 2013 with the Wisconsin Knowledge and Content exams, 24 and 15 with the Badger exam, and 20 and 15 and 16 with the Forward exam. So they even admit it, that they changed it and there's no way to do comparison. So when you think about it, when we were kids, we had the Iowa tests. You could look across states, you could look across cities, you could compare. If you were a parent, like, where do I want to send my child? You could really look across that. You cannot. It is very difficult to fully understand what is going on in the public schools. So I share that with you because no one else is going to share it with you. And we're all over it. We're going to continue to watch it. As soon as the testing results are supposed to come out mid-November to the end of the November, and I'm going to ask parents to share, like, what are they telling me? Because I don't have kids in the system, so I have to rely on the parents and some of the people that we hang out with to share with what's really being told in the school. But just know it's going to be very difficult. And I don't believe for a minute that they're going to be transparent and tell parents that, well, last year your kid was rated at 25 and this year it's 50, but they really didn't do anything different. So, and here's just a side, I just spoke to someone about 6 weeks ago, a parent that came forward and she said, at the end of last year, my daughter was in 3rd grade. At the end of the year, the teacher proceeded to tell me that my child is doing math and reading at a kindergarten level. And no one had had a word with her prior to this. 3rd grade, we all know how important early childhood learning is. And so she wanted to hold her child back, and the school wouldn't let her. Why? Because they get graded on their scorecard on how many kids pass every year. Their scorecard is about 10 to 12 pages. They don't even understand all the elements, but it's more important for them to get a good grade than to truly take care of your child. So think that child will be behind the rest of their life, because I don't believe they really will have an intervention program for that child to get them up to speed. So that's kind of the kinds of things that we're looking at and trying to, can you hold your question to the end? Thank you. The next thing I want to talk about is the transgender ideology, just a little bit. And this is my personal opinion. I've spent the last 18 months talking with a lot of people, reading a lot of information. So this is not necessarily Moms for Liberty's perspective, but based on what I'm seeing. Schools are focused on educating our children on the transgender ideology, and they're starting at pre-K. And they are sharing with pre-K kindergartners and 1st graders that there is no such thing as just male and female. And it starts really simple like that, just having that kind of a dialogue that you can be anything you want to be. And they have books. I have some kids' books. They talk very openly. You can be whatever you want to be, and they just build on that. So if, by the time these kids become 12, 13, 14, they've had many years of being told you can be anything, and we don't even know what's being taught in all the classes. This is the book I like to talk about. It is a teacher guide. It's called The Gender Wheel. I don't know which schools this actually gets taught in, but it gives them instructions to talk about all the different genders. I don't know, Heinz 57 genders here, and you can be whatever you want to be. And this is geared for, I want to say, 4th through 6th graders, maybe even a little less. And it's got femi boy, trans femi, femi girl, queer femi person. This is what your kids are being taught. And they don't come home and tell you that because most of these kids are little kids. So I tell parents every day you should be asking your kids, what did you talk about in school? And there are buzzwords that people have to be listening about. Our libraries are filled with this stuff. Classrooms have it in. A lot of times you won't see it because, especially for the little kids, they don't send that stuff home. They can pull out and read a book to kindergartners, 1st grade, and you will never know it. Also know that in Wisconsin, there is a law on the books that you cannot prosecute librarians, school administrators, and school boards against pornography. Why do we have that law in Wisconsin? It's been on the books a while, but you know, the Marxist people are pretty strategic. They probably knew what was coming and they put that in place. That's something that in the next legislature I would like to bring up and partner with other people to try to figure out if there's a way to change that. Because that's why they're not willing to bend on this when we bring it forward, because there's no consequence for them to have this here. And it is vulgar and pornographic. And please look at the books back there, or if you are interested in more, I can go into more detail. I think I'm going to stop there because I have some really good speakers that will also share, and you'll see how this all ties in together. And I will definitely take questions at the very end. But with this, I'm going to turn it over to Rocky, and he's going to share his story. Yeah.
Nice t-shirt.
Yes.
Let's see it.
It was a really good November 5th, wasn't it? Great night that night. And what makes it even better is what Laura was just talking about. By the way, my name is Rocky. I am co-chapter leader for the Wisconsin Chapter Gays Against Groomers. Along tonight is my partner, I like that, the co-chapter, also co-chapter leader for Gays Against Groomers, Jesse. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what I experienced myself going through this as a young adult, being introduced into the LGBTQ lifestyle and being introduced into things that you're seeing a lot of children being present to these days, like the gay pride events, drag queen story times, the drag queen shows. And it's not really a good ending to where they can lead themselves to be. So my name's Rocky, like I just told you. I work for an organization called Gays Against Groomers. It was founded by Jamie Michelle. She's a lesbian woman, biological woman, who got tired of what was happening to our community, and most of all, what was happening to the children around our country. Because of her bravery, I am able to stand here today and fight alongside the warriors across this great state of Wisconsin and across the country. We are 2 years strong with over dozens of chapters across this great country. So, we're going to get into the history of who I am, basically. So, I was born to a single mom, dad never around, estranged, didn't know my whole life. Mom grew up with a really bad addiction problem, and to be honest, she shouldn't have had kids. So while she was dealing with her vices, she wasn't really paying attention to what was going on in my life. And kind of like what you see today, a lot of these kids that fall victim to this ideology and this indoctrination are kids from a broken home, kids with no dad in the house, just no one present there to guide them on what to do, what is wrong and what is right. So along the way, a lot of things have happened to me by being left alone with an absent mother and no father. And it kind of, what happened was I was assaulted by someone she had left me with. So from that point on, I was 4 years old when that had happened. So growing up from there, I didn't really, how do you explain to someone that, hey, this guy did something to me, and I don't know if he was supposed to, but who's going to defend you when your own mom's not even there? She's the one who left you with him. So having nobody really to talk to about it, you kind of just keep that stuff in, and you start to build and build. And that can happen with anybody with any trauma, whether it's abuse physically, whether it's mental abuse verbally. Children are a gift, and they should be treated as such. The innocence is not gone until they actually leave the real world, and no child should ever experience what it's like to be in the real world at such a young age when it comes to making decisions for themselves, when it comes to being left in certain situations by themselves, or being introduced to certain things that could lead them down a certain way. Kids are like sponges, they grab onto anything. They like to mimic what they like to see, they mimic people they look up to. So you kind of got to lead them in the right direction, which unfortunately I didn't have. I was able to do what I want, whenever I wanted, got to go anywhere that I wanted as a teenager. So at the age of 13, I went to my first Pride event. So you can imagine the type of things that I saw there. But mind you, that was way back then. I'm 37 now, so my first Pride event in 13 was a long time ago. There were kids there, but there were more teenagers. It was geared, it was kind of, say, progressive in the way they would dress, and they would be a lot, not so much nudity as you would see now, but it just wasn't a place for kids to be. There's open alcohol things that were happening that shouldn't have happened. So being able to do things and not have guidance is one big issue that I had that led me to a path where I did not like. So being able, like 2 years down the road, I am just living life, no mom. She finds out I'm gay and doesn't want me in the house anymore, so there I am. Living in the real world as an adult because I'm working, I'm not in school, and I'm trying to survive as an adult while only being a child myself. So taking on that stress and being around environments where you're drinking and doing drugs and you just don't care, anything to numb those feelings that you still have from your early childhood. And that's again with any kind of trauma. And everybody goes through issues, it's just the way you deal with them and how you go about doing that therapy. So basically, after 15, I went to my next Pride event, which was the one day I can remember because that Pride event, I met some people that I thought would be the best friends in the world. They were always there for me, called me, told me that they helped me with whatever I wanted, had places I can go sleep at, took me out, they bought me booze, bought me cigarettes, bought me weed, but I didn't know what that was at the time. I didn't know what grooming was. I just thought they were people who had my best interest and were looking out for me. I always had a place to stay, I always had a cup full of booze, and I always had drugs in my pocket. So to me, they were my best friends. So I ended up staying with them for a couple months, and that was the worst mistake of my life. Because on my 16th birthday, they took me out to a drag show. And I got to go behind stage, go back doors, because, in that lifestyle, in that culture, in that scene, it pretty much allowed to do what you want as long as you don't talk about it. And you kind of get away with a little more things that wouldn't be, you just wouldn't do at normal places. So it's a bar scene, it's in Chicago, that's where I grew up, I should have said that, but Chicago nonetheless. Went to my first drag show at a bar and ended up getting drunk with the drag queen and people I was with. Drink after drink after drink, I started to feel a lot different than I've ever felt in my life. Turns out, when I woke up the next day, what I was drinking was actually roofie drinks, and I was raped by a drag queen and 2 other men who I thought were my friend. And that was at 15 years old. 16. So from that point on, I lost trust in humanity. I hated the world, I hated myself, I hated everything with life. I wanted to give up. And that ended up turning into a 14-year-long heroin addiction, which thankfully now I am 10 years clean, sober, and happy. That's what I looked at today. And so this is also another reason why I fight so hard, because this can happen to any child. any child. It doesn't matter if they're gay or lesbian or straight. It's just a child, period. Because we have sick people out there that are predators and have a certain fascination with things that are beyond understandable things. You can't comprehend why you want an adult to be attracted to a child, but there are people like that out there. And unfortunately, without having any guidance or anyone to show me what's right or wrong, I fell victim to grooming and pedophiles. So I have firsthand experience with what the signs are, how they go about it, the gifting, the over feelings, and trying to make a child a friend as an adult. Adults should never be friends with children. That's the first sign that you have an issue. So after I got sober, I fell a victim to, this is kind of like a repeating pattern for myself. I kind of find myself going into situations I should have never been in. We have the political part of my life where I used to be a hardcore liberal. Still carry some of that with me, as you can tell from the hair color and the piercings. But I'm not that liberal anymore. So I was a hardcore Hillary supporter up until 2015. Voted for Obama twice, did the whole thing, went to all the pride protests and everything I could get involved with until Hillary started running for president. And I kept being told that Trump was going to take away my rights. I was going to be, all our rights would be taken away. The end for the gay people, it's the end for minorities, it's the end for black people, it's the end for everything. And I promise you this all has a connecting. I'm not trying to be political, but it's part of my story, so I can't not talk about it. So when I started being told about my future being at stake, I decided that no, I have to do something different. Instead of having myself follow everybody, I wanted to lead my own self and be my own voice and reason. So I did what any smart person would have done in the beginning and would be researching for things for myself, which is what I do now. So when there's claims or people saying, oh, kids are being taught sexual materials in school, and one person saying, no, they're not, but those people end up being the same people that lied to you your whole life and told you that the opposition hated you. You kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and research yourself, which turns out a lot of those people are doing the things they say they're not. In schools, I don't know if you guys know this, but Lauren touched on it, these books that are being taught in school, they're geared towards children. Everything these people do is geared toward children, adolescents. They don't like to target anybody 18 and over. I don't know if you guys noticed that. They don't care about them because they're not their style. We have people in our school system that are predators. We have people in our school system that like to take advantage of the system, and the rules are they're allowed to not talk about certain things in fear of not being accepted by the parents or being told that, it's an unsafe environment for these kids, which is it's not true. It's not. The biggest problem that's happening is when parents don't know what's going on, they don't know how to fight back. A lot of this material that's being taught is subvertly etched into the curriculum to where you can have a math sheet and it's going to talk about, well, Susie is a non-binary and she has 6 apples, and then Rosie is a they them and they have 3 apples. If they put them together, how much do they have? Now to a normal parent's eyes, like, okay, we don't understand the terminology like they them or non-binary and stuff like that. So that's also some, I'm sorry, I'm just segueing a lot right now. It's kind of a crazy subject to talk about this because without trying to get emotional with it, it is a very emotional topic to talk about. And that's when we have teachers taking advantage of these students. And you have, some of the stuff that we do in Gays Against Groomers is we out teachers. We look at, no matter if you're left or right, we go after anybody. If you're hurting kids, then we're coming for you. There was a teacher we caught too as well, which is disgusting. We caught gym teacher hosting drag shows. We caught a bunch of, we have a city councilman and his boyfriend giving money to an underage boy at an event, dressed in women's clothing, dancing for money. These people have positions of power. They're teachers, they're in the schools, they're on your school board, they're on your city council, they're human resources officers. There's just a lot to battle and too much going on without having anyone's help. I know I keep rambling, I do apologize about that. So what I wanted to do was talk about the assault on children right now specifically happening, and a lot of this is happening in, let's say, like third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade, because they don't quite understand what they're being told and what they're being taught. So they can grasp onto anything, so they're easier to mold. They're easier to indoctrinate. I think the biggest thing that we can do is, I understand the word gays against groomers is kind of, in self-name, we're gay people, and conservatives, I've been told, don't like us, which is not true at all. And what I want to do is let everyone know that it doesn't matter if you're left or right. We don't care about your political leanings. We don't care about whether you love who you love or any of that. The common core issue is saving these kids from an ideology that at the end of the day will destroy them. We have an industry that is basically glamorized into living a life that you could be something that you're not. And it's a hopeless, endless cycle of hormones, surgeries, reconstructive surgeries. It's depression, anxiety, and most of the times it leads to suicide. So I don't think that should be put on any kid. And they have looked in schools, like in pre-K and kindergarten, there's a baby in daddy's tummy. Now that doesn't make any sense to me, because I was out mommies were the only ones that carry babies, not daddies, but we have that. Do you have that one, Laura?
I'll get
Have you
it,
seen that
I'll
one?
get it. No.
There's a baby in daddy's tummy. It's insane, some of these. But I do want to quote something from Gays Against Groomers that sums this up pretty well. School is not a place for underage children to be bombarded with info that could exacerbate their natural inner turmoil. Growing up, as hard as it is, we do not believe they should be exposed to and pressured into contemplating ideologies that prioritize sexuality and identity above real-world skills. Children need to be focused on learning pragmatic skills like math, to be a good friend, setting boundaries, basic communication, and how to be a team player. Queer theory and gender ideology are not necessary for development or self-discovery. They certainly weren't necessary for ours. And it's true. I think teaching kids to be good human beings and how to respect each other is easily done, and no need for pornographic materials, no need for gender ideology or transgender talk. You can do that just by being a basic human being and being nice to each other. And I'm actually going to hand this over now to the next speaker. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Difficult story to tell, I know. I'd like to invite Tammy up at this time, and she's going to talk about her daughter and the situation that their family went through. And you may know someone that's close to you that has something similar going on, and I hope she's able to help you. Thanks, Tammy.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Before sharing my story, I would like to take a moment and thank the organizers for putting this event together, the other speakers for their willingness to share, and everyone in attendance for taking time out of their lives to attend this event. If I have learned anything over the past 4 years, it is that educating the masses about the dangers of gender ideology is pivotal in the fight against this in our society. I extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for informing yourselves and spreading awareness on the topic. My experience with gender ideology came on quickly in late 2020. Autumn, my then 12-year-old sixth grade daughter was experiencing depression, anxiety, low self-worth, and a general dislike for herself. She came to me at the beginning of the school year and requested to see a counselor. I attempted to find her one but had no luck. Due to the isolation children experienced during COVID, there was a greater need for counselors than counselors available. Trying any avenue to help her, I reached out to her assigned school counselor to see if the district was aware of any practice that had openings. The counselor said she believed they did, and she would get back to me. It took the school a few weeks to find someone who had availability, and during that time, Autumn's mental health further degraded. The Friday before what was supposed to be her first appointment, Autumn came home from school and said she needed to talk with me. She had informed a friend at school that she might be transgender. That friend informed a teacher's aide, and the aide informed Autumn she could go to the office and change her name and gender by filling out a form. Autumn informed the aide that I would be upset if she did not get my permission. Only then did the aide encourage her to come home and speak to me about it. During the conversation with Autumn, she told me that she did not know what she felt like, but it was not a girl. She was concerned for her safety because she was starting to have thoughts of self-harm and suicide. She asked if she could be admitted into a mental health facility to get help. I called that evening, was very transparent with the concerns, and was informed to bring her the next day. During the intake process was when I started to think something was amiss. They referred to my daughter with the name and pronouns I had shared with them during the call the evening before. I was floored. My first instinct was to run out of the place with my daughter. Something did not feel right, but I could not bring myself to leave with her. I was supposed to be the strong one in that scenario. And places like this were supposed to help children with their struggles. I resisted the urge to leave and filled out the intake forms, but left knowing that I needed to research gender dysphoria to get a better understanding of how to help my daughter after her stay was over. The next morning, I reached out to Autumn's school and let them know that she had been admitted and filled out the medical release forms so that once Autumn was home, we all understood what was going on and could work together in Autumn's best interest. I then took to researching the topic to educate myself on how to help Autumn once released. One of the first books I read on the topic was Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier. By the end of the book, I was completely beside myself. I couldn't believe the events written about were happening to children all over the world, and that educators and counselors were on board with what I thought to be reckless medicine. That certainly couldn't be the stance that the facility helping Autumn believed, I thought. We had a call scheduled with Autumn's facility counselor coming up, and I was hoping it would ease my concerns. Of course they were going to consider Autumn's other struggles and not encourage her to make any rash decisions given her state of mind. But I was mistaken. We were informed that the only thing we could do to help our daughter was to use her requested name and pronouns. When I asked if anyone had spoken with her about her depression, anxiety, or low self-worth, we were informed that none of those issues had come up. When I questioned this, my husband and I were told that if we chose not to affirm our daughter and she killed herself, it would be blood on our hands for our unwillingness to accept her for who she truly was. While we were being told the only thing we could do to help Autumn was to affirm her, Autumn was being told that I was going to be her hardest struggle in life, that it was unlikely that I would ever accept her and her true identity. And the best hope she had for a somewhat normal life was to convince me to start medicalization early because it's much easier when you're younger. My daughter, emboldened by the professionals assisting her, reached out to her school privately and requested to return using her preferred name and pronouns. At that point, the school called me and informed me of that. I told them, at this point I was going to say yes. I was very new. I had not done thorough research on what was going on. I said, right now you can mark down as a yes. She will not be back for a month. I will reconvene with you at that time after I thoroughly research this topic and give you my final answer. In that month, I was truly, honestly devastated as a person as I researched the topic of gender dysphoria. The Abigail Schreier book, for example, I was not reading it as a concerned citizen. I was reading it as a mother who was trying to understand what her life was going to look like. And the further I dove into the topic, the more radicalized I realized it was, and I realized that the goal was to divide me from my daughter so somebody else could have control of her emotions. I called the school back and informed them, based on my research, we will not be affirming our daughter. We are going to take this medical concern very seriously, but we will not be affirming her when she returns to school. She will refer using her birth name and gender until further notice. We were informed by the principal that they had concerns about that because there were staff members that wanted to respect my daughter's wishes. And I said, well, I respect that they would like to respect my daughter's wishes, and I appreciate that. My expectation of every staff member in your building is that they will follow the direction of my husband and myself. I then emailed them every article that I had read, every study I had found. I had emailed that information to the counselor to press home the fact that I am not taking this from an emotional stance. I thoroughly looked into the research, and it is shaky at best if this is the best course of action for children to take. I received a call back from the principal the following day saying that public schools are advocates of children and not of parents, and they will move forward with whatever direction my daughter wanted to take, regardless of what we wanted for her. I immediately pulled my daughter from school. I pulled her off the internet. I isolated her from a lot of her friends. I pretty much cut her off from society. And I explained to my daughter that I'm not sure. I'm a very emotional person if somebody's impeding on things that I'm responsible for. So my daughter saw that. If I regret anything, it was my inability to hold my emotions when I realized all the institutions that I trusted and that I raised my children to trust were turning against me and trying to take authority over raising my child. She hated me for a very long time after I pulled her. She would come into the room and tell me what a transphobe I was. She would tell me, this is why everybody hates you, because you don't accept people for who they are. I could see the hate and disdain that she had for me because I was seriously the only adult in her life that was saying no. And I was never saying no to my daughter, like, no, this is absolutely not an option for you. This is not the life you're gonna have. It was a, no, you're 12 years old. We're not gonna make any rash decisions. You know, the person I was at 12 is not the person I was at 15, was not the person I was at 20. And we're just not gonna do anything that's serious that you could possibly regret, and there's no walking back from there. If you want to cut your hair short, let's go. You can wear whatever you want to wear, but your name is Autumn. You are a girl. I am not going to further your delusions to make you feel better. That is nice. That is not kind. I am attempting to be kind to you and to do what's in the best interest of you long term, not for your short term gratification. My husband and I moved out of our community into a new school district. We upheaved our entire life once this happened to our family. We moved schools, we moved houses, we cut off people that we could no longer communicate with. And it was hard for my daughter. Prior to this, we were very close. I was her bestie, I guess. Afterwards, because I raised her to trust the school system and medical institutions, once I stood opposed to them, she lost all trust in me. She was no longer speaking to me. She was not sharing her concerns with me. I did find a counselor for her to speak to. I do not know what they discussed because I allowed her that privacy. I made it very clear to the counselor, however, that any gender issues were off the table. They were to discuss her depression, her anxiety, her low self-worth, and her anger issues. It took about 18 months for Autumn to restabilize and realize that any sort of gender expression was not going to solve whatever internal problems were going on inside of her. There was many conversations to her that her and I would have where I would tell her, the best chance you have at a successful, happy life is to learn to love yourself as you are and to change the things that you can. You cannot spend your life ruminating on things that will never be. You will never be a boy. You will never not have a period. You will someday carry a baby, hopefully, if you want that. Calling yourself a boy is not going to fix all the problems that you have with not being the girl society needs you to be. it sounded like it fell on deaf ears, but she desisted completely. She actually travels with me and speaks out about it. She openly admits that it was the school's willingness to conform to what she wanted and the medical industry's willingness to conform to what she wanted was a detriment to our relationship, because she seriously thought that I was the enemy, because all those other institutions were willing to affirm her and support her and move her along the path. We had conversations about chest binders, because, you know, she identified as a boy, she couldn't have breasts. We had conversations about how she thought that she liked girls and that made her a boy. And I said, well, no, that's not the case. Girls can like girls too, sweetheart. Like you're 12 years old. I think you're putting entirely too much energy into your sexual orientation when you have substantially other things to worry about. Okay? You will know what you're attracted and identified to once your hormones kick in. Right now, you're guessing. You feel most safest with women right now because you are not in a place where you are going through, you're not at that stage of puberty. You feel safest with women because we generally feel safer with the same sex, especially at a young age. Many conversations like that. Now, I moved to a new school district and I thought it would be better. I met with the staff there and was informed that they had the same policy that my previous school district that we moved out of was. I remember having a conversation with them while I was looking through the paperwork when they made it clear that if your daughter comes to school tomorrow and asks to be a different name and gender, we will do it against your wishes. And excuse my language, but I did say, so if she came in and wanted to be called asshole tomorrow, that'd be totally okay? And they said, well, no, that wouldn't be appropriate. I said, well, who are you to determine what's appropriate for my daughter's name? I'm apparently not. She's the only one. So if she wants to come in tomorrow being called asshole or dick or an array of other names, who are you to dictate that she can't pick that? They did not know what to say, so at the end of the meeting, I just said, listen, I made it very clear to your administration that I am taking legal action against the Kettle Moraine School District for impeding on my parental rights. I will also take legal action against your district if you choose to violate my rights and you interfere yourself with the medical needs of my daughter. They did not. They stayed as far away from her as they possibly could, thank goodness. And it was time. It was time and maturity that helped my daughter get out of gender dysphoria. I spent pretty much all of my free time since November of 2020 studying, looking into, trying to understand gender dysphoria, why it's being pushed in our society, what tools parents can use to assist them with getting their children out of gender dysphoria. I did bring some books, they're over on the table. If I could tell you to do anything, it's nobody ever wants to hurt their child when they feel like they found the answer. Unfortunately, it's your job, okay? It's your job to hurt your child if they feel like they found the answer and the answer is going to put them in a path of destruction, okay? Children are not understanding that they have one body for the rest of their lives. One body. They do not understand that at 12 years old, that if they get their breasts cut off or if they stunt their puberty by taking hormone blockers or try to grow body parts that they shouldn't have by taking hormones, that there are going to be substantially risky negative effects that they are going to experience when their body starts to get older and naturally decompose. Like I'm sorry, we're all standing here naturally decomposing, right? That's the way the body works. And filling children's bodies full of that medicine at such a young age just speeds that up, okay? Some things that children will experience should they transition young. There's a likelihood that they'll never have an orgasm. There's likelihood that if they're a boy, that their penis will never grow to a point, they will have a micro penis. So even if they wanted to get a vaginoplasty and turn it into a vagina, that's not possible with an extremely risky surgery that actually takes colon lining and inserts it into the body part of the boy. Girls, their clitorises grow extremely huge. I know this is graphic, but this is the truth, guys. And it is very painful for them to orgasm or be touched. Their bones hurt, their osteoporosis can kick in. The doctors are not telling parents this. There's not a single professional when my daughter was going through this that told me of any of the risks. They just told me that should I not affirm her, that it would be my fault if she killed herself. Not the responsibility of the organizations teaching a very pseudoscience, poor research studied gender ideology. I think what I took away most from the 4 years of my research is that this is orchestrated by the powers that be, I can't tell you who they are, to destroy the family union in the United States. They want to break down the family unit. It's very hard to take over a country and turn it communistic if you have strong family units, the children depend on the parents provide for their children, and there's very little, if any, government interference. The best way to transition a company to a Marxist ideology is to start with the children and start brainwashing them young in public education systems. Teach them that their parents are not the people that they should trust the most, but it is the government and the educators that they should trust the most, that have their best interest at heart. I went through that. I have a lot of empathy for parents that feel that, like they don't know what to do, they don't want to lose their child for pushing back against the institutions that they depend on to function their life. Let's be honest here, every parent here depends on the public education system so they can go to work every day, and the medical system so that their children can stay healthy. At some point, our society's going to have to realize that they are going to have to walk away from that or push extremely hard to make changes so that 30 years from now, we still have a country and families stay together, and it's not everybody looking to the government on dictating what is and isn't okay in society. The last thing I'd like to say, I should add, we did win October of 2023. Was the first case in the nation where it was proven that the Kettle Moraine School District did violate our parental rights by trying to dictate the care and upbringing of our daughter. Any school official who tells you that social transition is not a serious medical step to take when people are experiencing mental health issues is a lie. You can go to the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty site or Alliance Defending Freedom site and look up my lawsuit. There are affidavits on there, professional affidavits from 2 psychologists in the field. One is a transgender woman that supports that it is in fact the parents' place to decide what's in the best interest of that child and to never cut the parent out of the equation. That clearly state that it is a mental health practice to socially transition a child, and schools should not go rogue and do that in secret or against the will of the parent. It should be a family decision. I personally do not feel it should ever be made for any child. What adults do with their time is not my place or my business, but children should not have the option to make any permanent changes to their lifestyle, their body, their name, how they identify with a gender, without, frankly, I think until they're 25. That's my personal opinion. You guys are entitled to your own, but I think they need to be fully developed and realize this so that they can grasp the consequences of their actions before they're allowed to make any rash decisions. What I'd like to leave you with is an excerpt from Annabelle Schreier's book. I think about this excerpt often. It is what really drove home for me that to socially transition my child would hinder her ability to grow as a person and not help her find out who she was. So this is Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage book we brought over. It's over at the table if you'd like to take a picture. So Abigail writes, years ago, I was writing a Holocaust-era work of historical fiction that required me to spend many hours in the basement of the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust and the Soha Foundation, listening to testimonies of survivors. I heard stories about Jews from all over Europe and Asia, representing every level of religiosity, social class, and education. I heard stories of brutal psychological torture, of starvation and beatings, and the torment of those watching their loved ones starved and beaten in front of them. I walked away with several distinct impressions, including this: of all the brutality and psychological scarring inflicted by the Holocaust, among the most abject of its survivors were those who spent years living under an assumed identity. I remember one woman's testimony in particular. Her parents had hidden her with a Catholic family who had agreed to take her for a fee, hastily taught the rosary and the Our Father and given a saint's name, I think it was Mary, for the duration of the Holocaust. She pretended to be someone else, never telling a soul who she really was. The artifice worked and the girl survived. Many years later, she was invited to Israel and welcomed as a Jewish Holocaust survivor. But as she explained in her piteous testimony, she did not know what to make of the odd embrace. She felt detached from other Jews and survivors and wasn't entirely comfortable with Christians either. It was hard to explain, though, she cried. Having had to pretend for so many years to have nothing to do with the Jews, to see Jews through Christian eyes, she didn't feel like a Jew anymore. She was at least half Christian. She had managed to be both and never entirely fitting in with either community. The Jewish girl who survived the Holocaust emerged as a woman who had no natural community, no home, no family, and no idea of who she was. What struck me about this story was that in many ways Mary had it easy. She never saw the inside of a camp. She never knew hunger. She never weathered physical abuse or torture. She was surrounded by playmates, hosted by a good family. And yet, unlike so many of the other Holocaust survivors I've known, she had never married nor had children. She remained in perpetual isolation, marooned on her own island. What had been stolen from her left no physical trace, but the psychological lacerations were profound. Her identity had been eroded by the deceptions of a mind that had finally managed to fool itself. Of course, unlike the girls who came out as trans, Mary hadn't chosen her new identity. It had been forced upon her. She had wanted to stay with her family, to be her parents' daughter, to be known by the name that had given her. But after years of living in a community in which everyone regarded her according to her new Christian identity, she had managed to expunge who she once was. The erosion was so complete she couldn't recover what she had lost, even when she might have wanted to. We are, by nature, social animals, as Aristotle once observed. We absorb ideas about ourselves from our surroundings more often than we realize and more deeply than we know. If we attend a school or live in a family in which we are made to feel stupid or told we are, some number of us will come to believe it. If a boy is placed in a school in which other boys tease him for being gay, he may come to internalize their homophobia. He may turn his anger inwards at himself. All of which is to suggest that social transition is not nothing. It is, in fact, an extremely potent and consequential act. It provides what world-renowned gender psychologist Kenneth Zucker, no fan of affirmative therapy, called an experiment of nurture when he spoke with me. It places a child or adolescent in an environment in which the entire school is asked to participate in affirming this child's identity as the opposite sex. If the adolescent wasn't entirely convinced of her new identity before the experiment, she may be much more so after it is underway. That really hit home with me when I read that in the book. That was my deciding factor on why I was not going to socially transition my daughter. Because it has been shown and studied that if we do concede to our child's requests and call them by an opposite name and gender, we are solidifying it in their mind. We are reinforcing to them that they were in fact born incorrectly, and the only thing that is going to fix them is identifying the opposite way and medicalize themselves so they are perceived by society as the opposite sex. So again, thank you so much, Laura.
I know you did, probably several of you can't believe that's really happening, and it is happening all across Wisconsin. We've had the opportunity to talk to superintendents at the school who believe it is their job to keep it from parents and not tell them. When we asked them why, they said because we're fearful that the parents would do something to the child. So think about this, a 12-year-old goes in there and says, I think I'm the opposite sex, but my parents aren't gonna agree with me. The teachers will make that call. Well, since they're not gonna be supported at home, we're not gonna tell them. And that can go on for months and months. So think of this. I mean, if a kid wants to drink alcohol or do drugs, it's the parents' job to say, no, you're not ready for that. And the parents become blindsided because, again, it could be 6 months till they all of a sudden found out that they were transitioning your child behind their back. And that's what Moms for Liberty is all about. It's about parental rights, and we have every right. And many people don't know that when a 13-year-old goes into a doctor's office nowadays, it is the law in Wisconsin that they don't have to tell the parents anything that's said in there. They can ask the parents to leave, and we tell parents, never leave your child alone in a doctor's office anymore. Because the first thing they start doing is asking them, do you feel safe? This and that, all these bizarre questions. And you know, adolescents have very creative minds, you know. And they, you know, it is very difficult. And I just applaud you. It's a wonderful story with a wonderful outcome. I've had the opportunity to spend some time with Autumn, and she's a wonderful young lady. So it all worked out. So with this, I want to end the program with our last speaker, Dr. Lucas, and I'm so excited because I think he has some new information that I've not even heard. Someone introduced me to him and what they're doing at their clinic, and I'm just very excited to know that there's another avenue for parents to maybe look into if they have this kind of situation. Thank you.
Well, Rocky, Tammy, Laura, thank you very much for the time you've spent preparing and active in here, and appreciate everyone likewise spending their time here. There's very few things that you will never get back in life, and time is one of them. Kind of to your point, right, for many people this is new information, but for me this is information 125 years old, really. But what we see, right, there is a problem, right? Several problems, really, but especially a broken perspective. We live in a time where the medical perspective has become captured by a system of ICD codes and matches them to surgeries and medications. There's nothing to match. Wait 6 months, and we'll find something to match. These things, however, regardless, are not made to solve why a problem started. It just manages symptoms, like putting air in a leaky tire or tape or an engine light. But there's a deeper issue. Namely, we've become disconnected from understanding the nature of the bodies that we have. And this isn't some deep lesson on physiology or endocrinology or any theologies that are out there. This is something that is simple. To borrow an old phrase from chiropractic, you will find that it is as simple as that. But simply saying there's a problem is not productive. Right? Because simply stating it is like being an inspector and having no solution for the rot or the roaches that you found. And that this is where chiropractic and specifically the wellness way come into play. First and foremost, we believe in a very, very simple truth, right? That your body, it doesn't make mistakes. It can't make mistakes. Because if it did, not one of us should be sitting here comfortably. Because we could not be sure our brain would simply make a mistake and fail to tell our heart to continue beating, or, God forbid, our colon works in reverse. And we can chuckle at that, right? Sure. But when you hold that viewpoint, why can't somebody's body be wrong in medical correction by any variety of alterations? Why not? But at the core, we disagree and say the body isn't wrong, it's simply struggling to function like it should. So your body is amazingly complex. And I say one of the greatest evidences for the divine, shall we say, intervention in existence is the human body. The body in general, but especially yours. We'll touch on that in a little bit. It's like a living Swiss watch, right? And everything in the body needs to work together. And when you get prolonged interference to normal function, you get bad outcomes. Prolonged stomach issues, low stomach acid, nutrient deficiencies, not counting other things that can buy. Prolonged liver issues, God forbid, and other things you can see happen. It gets to heart failure, IBS, even mental struggles. The body was made for normal functions, meaning it knows what to do, what it should be, and will do everything it can to make it happen. It adapts. If you cut your hand, for example, God forbid nobody cut their hand tonight, but do you have to eat an organic salad, or take a nap, or sing a song to it in order to make it heal? No, right? Will it heal without a Band-Aid? Yeah, sure. Your brain will rewire itself, its own nerves, to accommodate damage and changes from damage. No brain surgeon in the world, no neurosurgeon in the world can do that. The current solution that we have with our bodies is to cause further disruption, not how it work like it normally should. Ladies, back to you. Has anyone ever told you this? That your brain has the second highest concentration of estrogen receptors in your body. The first is your ovaries. You're amazing creatures. Now let me ask you a question, though. And I'm expecting some audience participation. What is estrogen? If you said hormone, you're missing some important information. And I say that with a bit of slyness to me, because estrogen is a family of hormones. There's three major ones: estrone, estradiol, estriol. I think necessarily you know. Technically there's a fourth, but now we're getting into that lesson. But beyond that, there's another 12 subtypes, or 14, depending on how you count. And this is what's going on in your bodies. And yet, that's a lot of hormone. How many does the medical profession, does the endocrinologist, the expert, work with? 2. Does that make sense? So if something is interrupting your body's ability to work with all of those hormones, managing that flow, do you think that might change how you feel if your brain is the second most sensitive place in your body to those hormones? Do you think men and women's brains are perhaps a bit differently sensitive to their own hormones? Ladies, do you think that's why your guys behave and think a little differently than you? Right? Not just because he's remarks, obviously. That's why. So let me share a story then with you. A simple story. And we'll break in the middle from time to time, but perhaps elaborate on some things. But a young woman arrived at one of our offices years ago and accompanied by her parents. They scheduled a meeting with our doctor. And they met with him first and said, "Our daughter is struggling." And the doctor nods, "Understandable. I've seen many young women go through severe struggles, speaking hormonally." But the parents shake their head and say, "It was bleeding. That's part of it. But no, our biggest concern is that she doesn't see herself as a woman. Can you help?" You see, at the Wellness Way, We often, if not daily, meet people who see us as the last hope. So no pressure, right? We're faced with tackling thyroid issues that have persisted for decades, untangling PCOS and endometriosis in a young woman who just wants to have a family or get through the month. We're helping soldiers who've endured unimaginable trauma finally get a good night's sleep. We see individuals whose seizures weren't helped with years of medication, if not their life felt worse. We've seen young nurses whose lives changed after medical injections they felt pressured to accept. All they wanted was a family. And sometimes we meet young people who were placed on years of birth control and underwent surgery and testosterone, and now just want to go back to feeling like themselves. The stakes feel high because these are the cases that the mainstream approach couldn't resolve and would oftentimes put through a cycle of 6 months to come back, try this medication, try that medication. I once had the pleasure of meeting someone that was on every SSRI medication on the market, including ones that weren't listed for that function. But that's the solution. Those are the high stakes that we face. The system, they went for help, saw things through the wrong lens. That's it. It's just a different perspective. And our approach, our perspective is different. At the wellness way, we believe medicine has an important place. Don't get me wrong, emergencies, right? If I have a heart attack, don't call the chiropractor. Okay? Don't give them the knife. But think of medical professionals like firefighters. When there's a fire, what are you going to call? Right? So why won't you call a carpenter or an electrician? Okay, I can do anything. What are those super little pliers going to do? Right? You need the professionals with those axes and those hoses to put out those flames, chop out your door, break up your windows, and save your building. However, imagine if after the fire is out, you simply move back in. What could happen? You could kindle, you could die, plank falls on your head, you forget who you are, you get hurt badly. So who are the next professionals you have to call? Exactly, right? The carpenters, the contractors, the people that can restore that building back to a livable condition. Why don't you use axes and hoses to repair it? It's a laughable idea. You can't repair it. Now consider what happens, however, if there's no fire, but you still ask the firefighters to intervene. What if they drove by your house every day and sprayed it down with water to prevent what you preventative against fires? It's such a silly idea. You'd soon find the house water damaged and rotting, and of course, if they chopped out your door, maybe you have that problem, and the mice are inside. It's a nightmare. And would any of that have helped if all along you'd just been a plumbing or electrical problem? No. Yet this is unfortunately what happens all too often in healthcare today. Specialists trained to respond to crises are called upon to manage daily health. And the tools they use are not designed to address these causative factors and what's contributing to creating problems. How many problems are a house fire? Thank God, just one. Right? Remember earlier, the idea of the body being a fine-tuned Swiss watch, right? Every gear has to work together in harmony. You don't consciously tell your body really to do any of the number of functions it does, whether it's releasing bile when you need or regulating your blood pressure or stand, because guess what? Your body has to change drastically at those moments. Your body adapts continually and intelligently adjusting its systems without even thinking about it. You have no idea how many unconscious processes are going through managing 15 hormones alone. But what happens when one of those gears gets disconnected? The system falls out of sync. It doesn't keep time like it should. Now imagine that watch gets squeezed and dropped and buried in dust. Only a number of problems happen. But what happens if you restore the gears? What happens if you clean up the dust? Right, it's working like it should. Right? Just like your body can function properly when it has the materials it needs and it's absent of the interferences. But if you treat the symptoms of a broken gear without fixing the causes of broken gears, you just take gears out, you try to wind it tighter, what's going to happen to that watch eventually? It'll break. What about the body? Now back to the young woman. She sat down with that doctor and introduced herself with a male name and explained her health struggles, which did not include feeling like a man, but other issues. Her period was killing her and she hated it. She was depressed, her brain was foggy, and bloating. After listening and going through her history and taking down what she was going through, the doctor took her parents aside. And this might surprise you with what he said. I can't help her change who she is, or who she sees herself as, to think she thinks of herself as. That's not my job. But I can help her in a different way. See, the Wellness Way was born from chiropractic principles. These are 125 years old. Anybody can read them. It holds that the body does not make mistakes. It responds to internal and external factors, environmental change with intelligence, and is designed to be well. Health is an entity. Disease is not. Disease is the absence of it, like light and dark. The body, when not hindered, will seek balance as it should. Modern medicine is only now exploring what we as chiropractors have long understood, and they're calling it ancient, for us, concept. They're just newly minting the term biological intelligence. And we say, that's cute. They're now getting to the idea that there's more to the body than just genes and chemicals and stimulus and response and reflexes. They're starting to suspect that it's an inherently smart thing, that it knows what it's doing and can make decisions and connections to adapt to all the curveballs that we feel in modern life, like terrible food. And it will do everything it can to keep working, even if those adaptations make you feel crummy, because it's either adapt or die. There are only two options. You're either moving towards health or you're moving towards death. That's how your body sees every day as a fight for survival. It gets too cold, you're dead. You walk outside, got clothes on, you're dead. But your body will sacrifice every single limb and pinky it can until it can't sacrifice anything else. And you see, at the same time, there's a cultural movement suggesting that if someone feels disconnected from their body, and it's simply being around the body altogether, the response is to medicate, surgically alter, and try to create alignment by changing the body itself. This approach presumes that the problem is with the body's nature. And from our perspective, that makes no sense. From a chiropractic perspective, your body is designed to be whole and functional simply as it is. It is exactly what it should be from the moment it is conceived. If you cut off or confuse the signal within it, that finely tuned harmony is disrupted, and it will change every other gear it can to try and survive. Until some point in time, it finally breaks. The person holding the watch will lose their sense of time, just like the individual loses their sense of self. The young woman's parents, they were initially surprised and a bit disappointed. Understandably, you go to a doctor and they say, "No, can't fix that." And they asked, "What do you mean?" And the doctor explained, if I try to work on how she sees herself without looking at her health, her whole body, she won't see improvement. Her body is struggling right now, and part of how she sees herself is affected by her hormonal health. I'm going to look for what's not functioning properly, what's interfering with her body's sense of self. When that's adjusted, I believe things will change. You see, when the body endures stress over time, its natural functions can get compromised. You get hit by a bus, it's really hard to adapt to that. If you get exposed to a small amount of poison every day, your body can handle that. Until you make it 15, 20, 30, 60 different doses of small amounts of poison. That's hard to adapt to. And the mind will pick up on those things. People don't feel out of place in their body because they're in the wrong body. They feel that way because something in their body is out of place. And they've lost the signals that should be connecting them to themselves. Ladies, gentlemen, your brains are very hormonally driven. In our practice, we're often compared to functional medicine or natural medicine, which we don't really like. We are different. Functional medicine, amongst other things, implies that other approaches are dysfunctional. Well, our thinking, again, is simply different, but we have a different perspective. We are focused on removing interference to the body's natural abilities to function, not masking symptoms. Your blood pressure is not because of a medication deficiency, nor is it necessarily from a magnesium deficiency. Can it be exacerbated? Sure. What happens when something else needs magnesium and you didn't solve the problem? Which, on that note, ask yourself this. Does a medication restore normal function?
No.
Aha! Does removing an organ restore missing health?
No.
Now think of headaches, brain fog, menstrual struggles, period problems, depression, bloating. Are these caused by deficiencies of medications? A lot? We're less enthusiastic. Did I poke on something uncomfortable? You know, that's silly when you put it that way. These issues arise when something within the body, within its normal functions, is struggling. Our job as a chiropractor, as the wellness way, is to find those obstacles and help the body restore itself. I am never the healer. As a chiropractor, when someone thanks me for getting their health back, I say, no, the work was on you. I just got the roadblocks out of the way. It's all your body. Remember, you don't have to sing to your hand to heal a cut. You need only not keep cutting yourself. In chiropractic care, our primary goal is to locate and remove interferences to the body's natural functions, especially through the nervous system. That's why I am so concerned about the spine and spinal health. I've got some fascinating research we can talk about later. But that one system, right, in the medical world, they now recognize a problem, that they don't have enough doctors that understand the autonomic nervous system, which, by the way, is third trimester for me, first trimester really. That's what we started covering almost right out of the gate. CNS 1, CNS 2, VNS 1, 2. That's all that we do. Why? Because every single organ, and more specifically, every single cell in the body is controlled and affected by this nervous system. Okay? You don't have a cardiovascular system. You don't have an immune system. You have a neuro-immune system. You have a neuro-cardio system. And those TikTok chiropractors that beat on people with drums miss the entire purpose, intention, and heart of chiropractic care, and make my job that much more harder. Because when done correctly, chiropractics can support the body's harmony, its rhythms, or I should simply say, enable it to restore normal function and adapt to stressors. Ask me for some studies on HIV and chiropractic care later, and I'll blow your socks off. And I'll stake my house on it. See, at the wellness way, we look beyond symptoms. Okay? Symptoms just are the red flag. We work to find what is disrupting normal function, remove it, and support the body as it heals itself. The young woman in the story went through testing, not to look for diseases. Because when your doctor runs a blood test, he's looking for something where it's like, where he's like, yeah, you can name it lupus. Does that help? Or does it just put a name to your collection of symptoms that I can find in any medical dictionary? I've got pathophysiology sitting on my desk. It's a honking huge book. I read through Costanzo's. I was taught out of Grey's Anatomy. You simply name a symptom. You don't name the cause. We looked at her body and we saw where it wasn't adapting like it should be. And we removed that interference. Simply gave the body what it needed to get back to normal like it knew it needed. And months later, she returned to that same office and introduced her by her professional name.
That's awesome.
So what can we do as a chiropractor? As the wellness way? Quite a lot, really. Right? But we can't address a problem with the same thinking that created it, enabled it, or continues it. Real change means thinking differently, taking a different approach, and being willing to accept the fact that that is hard at times. The way society has been structured and changed today makes these things more difficult. My family is familiar with navigating changing our food, and we've seen seizures change because of that. But by taking that different approach. Our job is to find those missing pieces, apply that different thinking. If you want medical results, go to the medical doctor. But when we find those things that are keeping the body from harming, and when we remove those, that's where real healing begins. There's an old saying in chiropractic, expect miracles. That's what we do.
Let's give them all a round of applause. We do want to open it up for questions, so if you do have a question, if you want to step up to the mic and you can ask any one of us, and we'll do the best we can to answer any questions you might have. I'm just going to tilt the mics down. No questions?
Yeah, everybody run at once. Gentlemen,
Somebody's got to start it off here.
All right.
someone got to do it. Gentlemen in the brown coat.
As you know, I walked in about 5-7
Yeah,
minutes ago,
yeah.
so I should be the last one up here. Listening to the presentation, what I heard of it, and Laura, for me, and I making an assumption here that many of us maybe are here because of the issues that Moms for Liberty address, especially in the public schools. So that leads me to chiropractic. Were you speaking at points here with regard, for instance, to the trans issue? That's okay. So that's what I totally
Yep.
missed, of course, at the end. I'm sorry.
I can get you a copy.
Okay, so I guess I won't belabor this any further because hopefully others are going to step forward here. But I'm going to find out from you or somebody what he had to say about, chiropractic, or I'll talk to him later. Thank you.
I'm here all night.
I have a question for you. Are you seeing many kids come in or parents bringing kids in to be treated on a more holistic chiropractic methodology?
Short answer, yes. The difficult part is people knowing and seeing that it's an option. There's one young lady in particular I've been working with for over a year. She came in as a detransitioner, but having no other path forward for getting through a lot of what she was going through, mental issues, brain fog, etc. But over the course of that year, we've seen a lot of change, and she frankly no longer considers herself a detransitioner.
Okay, great.
That's amazing.
So I would love to see more people, but not enough people know and see it. And we've seen these kids through time.
Mhm.
Over the course of 20 years as they trickle in for other issues.
And that's exactly why we invited him here, because we thought, this is another tool in our toolkit when we meet parents that just don't know what to do. We will be offering, hey, maybe you should have a discussion with them and see if this is something that there's going on with your child. Because as Tammy alluded to, and some of the parents that we've talked to that, they think they're all by themselves and they think no one else is going through this and they don't even know where to turn and what options are and they just comply because almost to a T, every parent has been told if you do not affirm your child will commit suicide and it will be your fault. They just say that rhetoric over and over and over and that is simply not true. The other thing, and I forgot to bring it up earlier, the schools will also tell you it is the law. I mean, they will stand there in bold-faced lie and say, it is the law. We are required to call your child by this opposite or new name, and it is not the law. And we've confirmed that with multiple attorneys. So it is about giving the parents the knowledge on how to defend their position than themselves. Any other questions?
I just remember I was gonna ask a question earlier, and then you re-triggered what I was going to ask, and I forgot about it, because I was so lost in all the speeches. Now, you said the school gets a scorecard based on the testing results.
Yeah, it's got many things to it. It's 10 to 12 pages long.
But it's the individual districts
Each school, and there is a district score, and I can show you where you can pull that up. And I will say that when we asked a couple of superintendents about various things on there, they didn't even understand it, and they said, we've asked DPI and they couldn't explain it to us. And yet, this is the scorecard that they're using to say how wonderful their schools are.
So that's where I was going, who gives the score? The Department of Public Instruction,
Yes.
DPI? So
Yes.
the DPI gives the score
Right,
to the district, and then schools inside the district, so you almost kind of see the ladder.
yeah, you can, yep, you can roll it all the way up and down. And it's interesting because, you know, when we have sat in the school board meetings, they only talk about that final score. So we were rated, our school was rated an 83%. And we raised our hand and said, well, are you gonna come and talk about the whole scorecard so that we can understand all the elements? And they said, no.
Wow, my golly. Rocky and I are used to DPI, and we've had to battle school board presidents who say that parents, you know, they like to, I think that this is a good saying, parents, you're stakeholders in your child's education, you're the stakeholders.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. You are not stakeholders. You are in control of your child's education. You're not bystanders watching a game play, but, you know, they like to use those buzzwords, you know,
Yep.
you know, it's almost very belittling to the parents. Because as you say, a stakeholder, a shareholder, stakeholder, and that's a parent's child. I mean, they're in control.
Right.
And they pay your taxes to the school, and they're not gonna let, you know, someone just say, oh, you're a stakeholder, so we know what's best. Parents always know what's best for their kid.
Absolutely. And, you know, the school boards will always say how transparent they are, and they are not transparent, but they say those words, and they shut parents down when they try to ask specific questions and gain more knowledge, and they really intimidate the parents and make you feel like you're stupid. They really do. Like, how could you possibly, you know more than me? I have a PhD or whatever, but we're arming the parents with enough information to go in and ask the right questions and stand beside them. Because it is, you know, I don't have kids in the school system, I have grandkids, but parents sometimes are concerned about pushing too hard because they don't want their kids to be retaliated against. And we'll stand beside them as well, we will not tolerate that.
I'm back again.
Good.
What strikes me, and let's see if we can agree on this quickly. When the DPI says they cannot explain, they don't understand, or the superintendent, whoever, obviously, to me, that says we know where this document came from. This is out of the Department of Education of the U.S. government. This is where this is coming from. So that's number one. Number two, I want to share, maybe of interest, on the internet today, state of Oklahoma. The head of the Department of Education, the DPI for Oklahoma, has taken steps to inform the federal government that it intends to remove itself from, you know,
From the
I
union?
From basically, I would argue, the unconstitutional control of the Department of Education over the state. And in that document that I read, they're making suggestions, of course, to the Trump administration on what basis this stands, and to remove and nullify totally the Department of Education. So that's, and there's a second state that has already moved in the same way. So this will be hopefully of some help when we get back to talking with their local administrators, and now they can't define, they're gonna have to define.
Right.
Because, and of course, it goes back, and it states that one of the Department of Education's authorized powers is to see that the federal policies are enforced. And of course, this is a tool they're using a lot of times we're talking about to enforce without, you know, even being able to define. Okay.
Thanks for
Thank you.
sharing that. We'll keep an eye on that. Okay, you have a question?
Do I have a question? I've got a couple of, one question, one statement. My statement is that I've got a 41-year-old and a 43-year-old, and back then, they would change the tests every 3 to 5 years. So we're talking about, this is not something current, this has been happening for a long time. And of course, then they tell you your child is average. What does average mean? Okay, so we were talking about the drugs that young people are given to change their orientation, their sex, or their gender, which we've got to say now instead of sex, don't we? We can't say that. Well, I don't know what a woman is any longer. But my question is, what happens to bone structure when a young person who is an adolescent and has yet to reach puberty, is just getting into puberty? What happens to their bone structure with these drugs that they're given?
Starts to break away. They lose bone density, they osteoporosis.
Their bones stop growing.
Yeah, it's not good for their bone structure at all. None of these medications are meant for them. Just like the doctor was saying, your body's meant to do certain things, and introducing a whole host of chemicals and medications that your body isn't meant to digest and work its way, it's going to destroy your body.
Well, and you don't need to be a doctor to know that
Yeah,
stopping a normal biological activity that happens in every human being
Yeah.
is probably a bad idea.
It's the greatest gift of life. Puberty.
So why is it happening?
Because people want to control children. They're out to destroy money, yeah. Because they're, if once you transition, you're like a lifelong victim, enslaved to the pharmaceutical industry. You're spending upwards of millions of dollars your entire lifeline if you make it that long. Because a lot of these people, 20% increase in suicide after a transition. You're on medications, you're going hormones, the surgeries, you're cutting your body up and destroying your natural process of living and being a human. What do you think is going to happen? And that's what you don't understand. You're getting science, biology, reality, and fact for feelings, and that's what all of this is. I think we need to just start, bullying needs to come back a little bit. I think, honestly,
Well,
the hard truth. I
I-
don't want to be
and
by
the-
bullying. though.
Well, and the
Let's be
interesting
honest.
thing is Trump is going to allow these people to sue the doctors, and
Yes.
that's gonna be a
Yes.
game changer. Because what's happened is, everybody here has talked with detransitioners, and the problem is by the time they've gone through the detransition, or the transition, and they've lived that way for a while, and then they choose to detransition, and then realize, oh my gosh, this should have never been done to me. The time frame to bring forward a lawsuit is usually expired already. And it's been designed that way specifically so that they can't come back and sue, so it's very hard. And it's very hard for the people who do detransition to even come about that, because they feel isolated, and we've been to several sessions where detransitioners, and it's too bad Chance couldn't come today, because she is a perfect example of, she lived her life as a lesbian and then transitioned to be a male and was on hormones for 18 months, and for the last 10 years, what it's done to her body. She would have been a great one. I do have all her information, so if you want to take a picture of it and listen to her story, it is on our YouTube, but it's, the reason that it's gone up, it is the money, because abortions have gone down, and who is the #1 provider right now? Planned
Planned
Parenthood.
Parenthood provides the hormones.
The hormones, with a 30-minute phone call, kids can get hormones. And the other thing to be aware of, the Planned Parenthood wants to put health clinics in our schools. Why do you think that? So that they can help these kids when they're, give them birth control, when they get pregnant, they can help them get an abortion without parents knowing anything.
Isn't that why Nina's Joint School District kept their health clinic over at Shattuck? I just want to say one more thing, and that is, I remember as an adolescent, 13 through 15, I will tell you that nothing sexual happened, but I sure did have crushes on girls. Wait a minute, were they girls? I absolutely had crushes on girls. And it was for popularity.
That's what it is. It's a
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I do.
Good, come forward.
All right, so there's transition. My nephew goes, he's a student at Appleton East. They have students there that think they're cats.
Yeah.
I mean, this transition thing is not just gender.
No, it's.
And I don't understand what the end goal is, but we have a bunch of crazy people. I mean,
It
that's
is
an
a mental
understatement.
illness. It is a mental illness.
Well, are they trying to control everybody? That's my end. So if you're told something enough, that's how you will accept it.
Well, and they want you to say, they want all of us that don't believe it to say it and recognize it. That's why they're pushing the laws to require you to use the pronoun. And, you know, we have to be strong, and this is what I say, my pronoun is I'm a child of God, and I only believe in males and females. And we have to be strong enough to say that with conviction, because they want to beat us down and force us to say that.
Also, we, the people, our tax money goes to the schools. It needs to stop, and we have to come together. My daughter's gay, I love my daughter. I know, I have no problem with that. And they want to divide us everything that they can. And that's how they do it. And people have to realize that. Well, you're Democrat, you're Republican, you're gay, you're this, you're that. And my daughter also doesn't identify with transgender.
Right.
Yeah, she doesn't. People were asking her, and she said, I don't identify with that.
Tell her to join.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, she's great, and this whole thing is just one division after another. People have to come together.
Yeah, and they're hijacking the lesbians and gays because people aren't coming forward as lesbians, they're coming forward as transgender people now.
Queer,
Yeah.
non-binary.
But, you know, parents have to be
Cast.
showing up to the school board meetings and fighting it, and that's what we're all about, is trying to get this message out, because we can only do so much, and when we see parent groups come together and address it and not tolerate that kind of behavior by the schools and the school board, that's when we start to drive change.
Our country spends more probably in education, has the poorest result. We spend more in pharmaceuticals and medical, and we have the poorest result. When is this gonna end? Someone has to come up. I'm a cancer survivor. I know what it's like. Going on my 32nd year at the end of this month. So, and I've been poisoned by the chemo. The chemo that they gave me, if it leaked out, would burn my skin. That's being pumped inside me. And today, we could do a lot better. I see these poor kids and everything. Something's gotta change. That's why I'm here. I've had it.
Yeah.
I've had it. And I'm sorry I met you, but.
No, that's what we're here for. We need more, I always say it, we need more pissed off parents.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that go for action.
Well, my daughter is 30 years old. She just turned 30 on the 5th. Had her birthday, I guess, with, well, you know why.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, and that's another thing. This is only a beginning. They're saying that these kids are traumatized now in school because of, this is ridiculous. This is all lies, propaganda.
Well, the good news is Trump won.
Yeah, that's right, also.
So now it's all gonna change.
Well, hopefully, but he's gonna only gonna be in there for 4
T-shirt.
years. And he's got a long road ahead. So we have to keep that going. All right, thank you.
I'm gonna close up the meeting because some people have to go. We are gonna hang around, so if you have specific questions, come on up to us. Thank you, everyone.
I think it may be worth stating before we go and leave perhaps,
I don't think you
I don't want to say philosophical note, but we'll leave off on an important note. Because if from here we simply go home and enjoy the